My name is Allison Matthews, and at 27, I never imagined fighting for the house my father built for our family. When Dad died, I inherited our home, but my stepmother Geraldine had other plans. What started as grief sharing quickly turned into psychological warfare, with me cooking, cleaning, and eventually paying rent to live in my own house. But everyone has a breaking point. Mine came with a document that changed everything. Before I dive into how I reclaimed my life and my home, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up to someone who tried to take what was rightfully yours. My father, Thomas Matthews, wasn't just my dad, he was my hero. A self-made real estate developer who built our family home with his own two hands when I was just 3 years old. Every corner of that house held a memory, from the kitchen where he taught me to bake cookies to the backyard oak tree where he built my treehouse. The house was a physical manifestation of his love for our family. When my mother Catherine was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was only 10. For 2 years, our lives revolved around hospital visits and treatment schedules. I remember Dad carrying Mom from the car to their bedroom when she was too weak to walk, never complaining, always gentle. When she passed away, I was 12, and for a while, it felt like the light had gone out in our home. Dad and I grieved together. He'd sit with me on the window seat in my room, arm around my shoulder, as we looked at old photo albums. "Your mom lives in you, Allison," he would say, pointing to my eyes that matched hers exactly. "Every time you laugh, I hear her." For 5 years, it was just the two of us. Dad turned down business trips that would take him away overnight. He learned to French braid my hair for school pictures, terribly at first. But he improved with practice. He attended every school play, science fair, and soccer game. On weekends, we worked on home improvement projects together, repainting my bedroom, installing new kitchen cabinets, rebuilding the back porch. Our house continued to evolve with us. "This house will always be your safe place," Dad promised me once while we were replanting Mom's garden. "No matter where life takes you, you'll always have a home here." When I was 17, Dad met Geraldine Fletcher at a charity auction for cancer research. She was striking, tall with perfectly styled auburn hair and designer clothes. She worked in pharmaceutical sales and had donated several items for the auction. I still remember how she approached our table that night, champagne glass in hand, complimenting Dad on his generous bid for a weekend getaway package. "Your daughter is beautiful," she told him, smiling at me. "You must be so proud." Dad blushed like a schoolboy. I hadn't seen that look on his face since before Mom got sick. Geraldine seemed kind enough during their courtship. She brought thoughtful gifts when she came for dinner, books she thought I might enjoy, artisanal chocolates from her business trips. She asked questions about my college plans and seemed genuinely interested in my answers. When she mentioned her own children, Jasmine, 19, and William, 16, she spoke of them with obvious pride but never compared me to them. There were small things I noticed, how she subtly redirected conversations back to herself, how her smile sometimes didn't reach her eyes when Dad was looking away, how she occasionally checked price tags when Dad showed her things he'd bought. But I dismissed these observations. Dad was happy for the first time in years, and I was heading to college soon. If Geraldine made him happy, who was I to object? Their wedding was a small ceremony in our backyard. 6 months after they met, I stood as Dad's best woman, forcing a smile through the vows. Geraldine's children attended, but seemed disinterested in the proceedings. Jasmine spent most of the ceremony texting, while William looked bored and uncomfortable in his suit. "We're going to be one big happy family," Geraldine announced during her toast. Her arm linked through Dad's. "Thomas has opened his heart and home to us, and we're so grateful." Something about the way she emphasized home made my stomach tighten. But I pushed the feeling aside. The newly blended family dynamics were awkward from the start. Jasmine and William moved into our house the weekend after the wedding. Jasmine took the guest room across from mine, immediately complaining about its size compared to her old room. William moved into the basement room Dad had converted into a home office, displacing Dad's work materials to a corner of the living room. "It's an adjustment period," Dad assured me when I expressed concern about the territorial shifting happening in our home. "They're just getting comfortable." I left for college a month later, relieved to escape the tension but worried about Dad. During my freshman year, I called home twice a week. Dad always sounded cheerful, telling me about weekend trips with Geraldine or home renovations they were planning. If I asked to speak to Geraldine, she was always just stepped out or taking a bath. When I came home for Christmas that first year, I barely recognized our family home. The warm, comfortable furniture had been replaced with stiff, modern pieces. Mom's antique mirror that had hung in the entryway was gone, along with most of the family photos. The kitchen had been redone in sterile white and stainless steel, erasing the cozy yellow walls Mom had loved. "Geraldine has a wonderful eye for design," Dad said when he noticed my shock. "The house needed updating, don't you think?" I didn't have the heart to tell him that the house no longer felt like home. Instead, I focused on enjoying our time together, suggesting we bake Mom's famous gingerbread cookies. "Oh, Geraldine doesn't allow that much sugar in the house anymore," Dad explained apologetically. "She's very health conscious." Throughout that holiday break, I witnessed the subtle ways Geraldine had inserted herself into every aspect of our lives. Dad checked with her before making any decisions. He apologized constantly for small things, leaving a coffee mug on the counter, tracking in snow from the driveway. The confident, decisive man who raised me seemed diminished somehow, eager to please his new wife. When I returned to school, I threw myself into my studies, trying not to think about the changes at home. I dated, made friends, joined clubs, creating a life separate from the uncomfortable reality waiting during breaks. I still called Dad regularly, but our conversations grew shorter and less substantial. There was so much I wanted to ask, but couldn't find the words for. Little did I know that these subtle shifts in our family dynamic were just the beginning. The foundation was being laid for a power struggle I never saw coming, one that would eventually force me to choose between peace and justice, between memories and self-respect. The call came during my senior year of college, a Tuesday morning in October. I was rushing to my advanced economics class when Dad's number flashed on my phone. "I need to tell you something." "Sweetheart," he said, his voice strained in a way I'd never heard before. "The doctors found something. Cancer. The same monster that took my mother was now inside my father. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, already spread to his liver." The prognosis was grim. Months, not years. I left campus that afternoon, throwing clothes into a suitcase without seeing them through my tears. My academic advisor helped arrange for remote coursework so I could complete my degree while caring for Dad. By the time I arrived home, he looked smaller somehow, as if the diagnosis itself had physically diminished him. "I'm going to beat this," he insisted, hugging me in the driveway. But we both knew what pancreatic cancer meant. We'd done this dance before with Mom. Geraldine took charge of Dad's medical care immediately. She created color-coded binders of treatment options, scheduled appointments with specialists, and joined online support groups for caregivers. To outsiders, she appeared the devoted wife, stepping up in a crisis. But something felt off about her performance. "Thomas needs rest," she'd announce whenever I tried to spend time alone with him. "The doctors say stress worsens his condition." Somehow, I became the source of stress in her narrative. If Dad and I were laughing about old memories, she'd appear with his medication, mentioning how elevated emotions could aggravate his symptoms. If I brought his favorite foods, she'd intercept them, explaining his new doctor-approved diet didn't allow such things, though I never saw these dietary restrictions documented anywhere. Dad's condition deteriorated rapidly despite the treatments. Within 3 months, he was bedridden, requiring round-the-clock care. I took a leave of absence from my final semester, postponing graduation to be with him. Geraldine hired a day nurse, but insisted on handling the night shift herself, effectively controlling who had access to Dad during his most vulnerable hours. "Dad, I need to ask you something," I said during a rare moment alone when Geraldine was meeting with the insurance representative. "Are you happy with how things are being handled? Is there anything you want done differently?" He squeezed my hand weakly. "Just promise me you'll be okay, Allison. The house is yours. I've made sure of that. It was always meant for you." Before he could say more, Geraldine returned, all efficiency and forced cheer. "Time for your medication, darling," she announced, effectively ending our conversation. As January turned to February, Dad's lucid moments became scarce. The cancer had spread to his brain, causing confusion and memory lapses. Sometimes he called me Catherine, mistaking me for my mother. Other times, he didn't recognize me at all. Those were the hardest days, standing beside his bed, a stranger to the man who had been my whole world. One clear afternoon in late February, Dad woke suddenly from a morphine-induced sleep, his eyes sharp and present for the first time in weeks. "Allison," he said, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. "The house. It's yours. Always has been. Don't let anyone take it from you." "I know, Dad," I assured him, trying to sound stronger than I felt. "I know. He died that night while I was taking a quick shower. Geraldine was with him at the end. She didn't call me until it was over, claiming she didn't want to disturb my rest. I never got to say goodbye. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and platitudes. Geraldine organized everything, positioning herself as the grieving widow center stage. I stood slightly apart, watching as people I barely knew shared stories about my father, many of them inaccurate or exaggerated. Jasmine and William attended, but spent most of the service on their phones. "Your father would be so proud of how you're handling this," people told me, mistaking my numbness for strength. The reading of the will took place a week later in the office of Dad's attorney, Martin Wells, who had been his friend since college. As expected, Dad had left the house to me, along with most of his assets and his share of the business. Geraldine received his personal effects, his car, and a generous life insurance policy. What I didn't expect was her reaction. As Martin read the details of my inheritance, her face hardened, a muscle twitching in her jaw. When he finished, she turned to me with eyes like ice. "This seems unnecessarily complicated," she said with artificial sweetness. "Thomas and I discussed me taking over the house while you finish school. You're young. You don't need the burden of property management." Martin cleared his throat. "The will is quite clear, Geraldine. The house belongs to Allison, as Thomas always intended." The drive home was silent. When we arrived, Geraldine went straight to her room without a word. Later that night, I heard her crying loudly enough that I was sure it was for my benefit. The next morning, she appeared at breakfast with red-rimmed eyes. "I don't know what I'm going to do," she said, stirring her coffee absently. "This house is the only home William and Jasmine have known for years. Where will we go?" Guilt twisted in my stomach. Despite everything, I couldn't imagine forcing them out immediately after Dad's death. "You can stay," I found myself saying, "until we figure something else out. Dad would want us to help each other through this." Relief flooded her face. "You're so much like your father, always thinking of others. We'll make this work, as a family." I nodded, trying to ignore the warning bells in my head. For Dad's sake, I would try to maintain peace. We were all grieving, after all. In time, we could sort out a more permanent arrangement. If only I had known then what that simple act of kindness would cost me. How quickly grief can be weaponized, how easily goodwill can be twisted into obligation. In trying to honor my father's memory, I was about to surrender the very thing he had most wanted to protect. 6 months after Dad's death, I finally completed my degree and returned home permanently to take a job at a local financial firm. During my absence, Subtle changes had transformed the house even further from the home I remembered. The first night back, I discovered my childhood bedroom had been converted into what Geraldine called a multipurpose space, a combination of home gym and storage room. My clothes and personal items had been boxed up and moved to the much smaller guest room in the basement. We needed the space, Geraldine explained when I confronted her. This arrangement makes more sense now that you're an adult. Besides, Jasmine needed a workout area for her physical therapy after her sports injury. I swallowed my objections. After all, it was just a room, and Jasmine had indeed torn her ACL during a soccer game. The basement room was damp and dark, with a small window well that provided minimal natural light. But I told myself it was temporary. Within weeks, more changes followed. Returning from work one evening, I found Dad's leather armchair, the one where he'd read me bedtime stories, gone from the living room. "Where's Dad's chair?" I asked William, who was sprawled across the new sectional sofa playing video games. He didn't look up from his screen. "Mom sold it. Said it didn't match the new decor." The new decor. Every week, more pieces of my history disappeared, replaced by Geraldine's modern aesthetic. The built-in bookshelves Dad and I had constructed together were painted white. The family photos replaced with abstract art. Mom's garden was torn out for a stone patio with sleek outdoor furniture better for entertaining. When I tried to discuss these changes with Geraldine, she dismissed my concerns. Thomas always said the house needed updating. I'm simply carrying out his wishes. But Dad had loved this house exactly as it was. Every worn floorboard and slightly crooked doorframe told our family story. The renovations weren't about improvement, they were about erasure. Decision-making power shifted just as deliberately as the furniture. One Sunday, I invited 2 college friends for dinner, only to find Geraldine had scheduled a book club meeting in the dining room. "You should have checked the family calendar," she chided, gesturing to a new whiteboard in the kitchen I'd never seen before. "Everyone needs to coordinate schedules." Looking at the calendar, I noticed Geraldine, Jasmine, and William all had entries: dentist appointments, social events, work schedules. My name appeared nowhere. "I didn't know about this calendar," I said. "It's been there for months," Jasmine smirked from the doorway. "Maybe if you visited more often instead of abandoning Dad when he was sick, you'd know how things work around here." The accusation stung like a slap. I had put my entire life on hold to care for Dad. Jasmine had visited exactly twice during his illness, both times for less than an hour. More family members began appearing regularly: Geraldine's sister Angela and her husband Frank, cousins I'd never met, friends who referred to themselves as practically family. They all treated me with the same slightly confused politeness one might show a foreign exchange student. Not unwelcome, exactly, but certainly not belonging. At a 4th of July barbecue, I overheard Angela asking Geraldine, "When is Allison planning to get her own place?" as if I were a temporary houseguest overstaying my welcome. Geraldine's response chilled me. "We're working on it. Thomas left things in such a mess, but we'll sort it out." The house had been left to me free and clear. There was no mess to sort out. What was she telling people? My closest friends, Heather and Dana, noticed the changes in me when we met for coffee. I'd become quieter, more withdrawn, constantly checking my phone for texts from Geraldine asking when I'd be home. "You seem on edge," Heather observed. "Is everything okay with the living situation?" I found myself minimizing the issues. "It's fine. Just an adjustment period." Geraldine's still grieving. Dana frowned. "It's been 6 months, Al. And it's your house. Why are you walking on eggshells?" I didn't have a good answer. Somehow, I'd slipped into a pattern of appeasement, always choosing the path of least resistance. Dad would want us to get along, I told myself. He would want peace in the home he built. But peace came at an increasingly steep price. When I arrived home late from work, Geraldine would be waiting, questioning why I hadn't called. If I left dishes in the sink, I'd find passive-aggressive notes about respecting common spaces. My mail was opened before I received it, my privacy an afterthought. I thought it might be important, Geraldine would say innocently when confronted. I was just trying to help. The most painful losses were the sentimental items that kept disappearing. The antique music box Dad had given me for my 16th birthday. The collection of seashells from our family vacation to Maine. The handmade quilt Mom had sewn before she died. Each time I asked about a missing treasure, Geraldine had an explanation. It must have been misplaced during cleaning. Perhaps it was accidentally donated. Maybe I'd imagined owning it in the first place. Gaslighting became so common I began doubting my own memories. Had Dad really promised me the house would always be mine? Was I misremembering our conversations about Geraldine? Was I the unreasonable one for wanting to preserve some part of my family history? The final insult of this period came when I discovered my name had been removed from the utilities. The water, electricity, and internet were now in Geraldine's name. When I questioned this, she feigned confusion. It just made sense to consolidate everything, she explained. Makes the bills simpler. But I understood the message clearly enough. This was no longer my home. I was merely a guest in Geraldine's house now, a guest who was rapidly wearing out her welcome. By the 1-year anniversary of Dad's death, my role in the household had fundamentally changed. What began as occasional favors had evolved into expected duties. The transformation happened so gradually I barely noticed it happening, like a frog in slowly heating water, unaware it's being boiled alive. It started with reasonable requests. Allison, since you're heading to the store anyway, could you pick up a few things for dinner? Or, would you mind starting the laundry while I take William to practice? Soon. These occasional favors became daily expectations. I would return from my full-time job to find a list of chores waiting, clean the bathrooms, vacuum the entire house. Prepare dinner for 5 people. Geraldine often invited guests without warning. If I mentioned being tired after work, Geraldine would sigh dramatically. I suppose I could do it. Though my back has been giving me such trouble lately. Your father would be so disappointed to see how unwilling you are to help the family. Dad's memory became her favorite weapon. Any resistance was painted as a betrayal of him, as if my setting boundaries somehow dishonored his legacy. Jasmine and William contributed nothing to household maintenance. Jasmine, now 20, worked part-time at a boutique but spent most of her earnings on clothes and nights out. William, 17, played video games for hours, leaving trails of snack wrappers and empty soda cans throughout the house, messes I was expected to clean. They're still adjusting to life without a father figure, Geraldine would explain when I suggested they help. We can't put too much pressure on them right now. Apparently, my grief warranted no such consideration. The kitchen became a particular battleground. I enjoyed cooking. It reminded me of Sunday afternoons with Dad, trying new recipes together. Now, I was expected to prepare elaborate meals for the entire household, only to have Geraldine critique every dish. The chicken is a bit dry, don't you think? She would comment, barely tasting it. Or, this sauce has too much garlic. I've told you before that William is sensitive to strong flavors. After spending hours cooking, I would then wash every dish while Geraldine, Jasmine, and William retreated to the living room to watch their shows. If I left so much as a spoon in the sink, I'd hear about it the next morning. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day at work, I arrived home to find Geraldine hosting a dinner party for 8 people, a surprise she'd mentioned this morning she hadn't. There you are, she exclaimed as I walked through the door. Everyone's starving. Could you whip up that pasta dish you made last week? And we're out of wine. Would you mind running to the store? The guests, Geraldine's friends from her country club, watched with mild interest as I changed out of my work clothes and began preparing dinner. Not one offered to help. As I served them, one woman commented, "Geraldine, you're so lucky to have live-in help. Is she with an agency?" Geraldine laughed. Oh no, Allison is Thomas's daughter. She's staying with us while she figures out her next steps. Staying with them. In my own house. I retreated to the kitchen, fighting back tears as I scraped expensive cheese into the trash. Listening to them laugh and chat in the dining room with the table Dad and I had refinished together the summer before I left for college. My personal space shrank continuously. I'd return to find my room had been tidied, my belongings rearranged or missing. My bathroom was regularly used by Geraldine's guests, my toiletries and towels borrowed without asking. When I installed a lock on my bedroom door, Geraldine demanded a key in case of emergencies. I began spending more time away from home, picking up extra projects at work or meeting friends for dinner, anything to delay my return. But Geraldine noticed this strategy and countered it effectively. Since you're so busy with your social life, I've arranged for you to take William to his orthodontist appointment tomorrow, she informed me one evening. And Jasmine needs a ride to the airport on Friday for her weekend trip. I'd do it myself, but I have my charity committee meeting. My objections were met with wide-eyed innocence. But you're part of this family, Allison. We all need to support each other. Your father would be heartbroken to see you pulling away from us like this. The family dinner marking the anniversary of Dad's death became the scene of my most public humiliation. Geraldine invited extended family and Dad's former colleagues, positioning herself as the grieving widow hosting a memorial dinner to honor Thomas's legacy. I spent the entire day cooking Dad's favorite pot roast, garlic mashed potatoes, apple pie from scratch. Hours of work, all while fighting back tears, trying to feel close to him through the recipes we'd enjoyed together. When guests arrived, Geraldine directed me to serve drinks while she accepted condolences. As people took their seats for dinner, I noticed there wasn't a place set for me at the main table. Oh, Allison, would you mind eating in the kitchen? Geraldine asked quietly. We're one chair short, and someone needs to bring out the food anyway. I stood frozen, holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres, as 20 pairs of eyes watched the exchange. The silence stretched uncomfortably until I nodded and retreated to the kitchen, where I ate alone at the counter. Listening to Geraldine tell stories about her Thomas, stories that either never happened or had been twisted beyond recognition. That night, after the guests left, I discovered Geraldine had removed the last photos of Mom from the hallway wall. The small collection had been my final connection to her presence in the house. In their place hung a large portrait of Geraldine, Jasmine, and William, the new family. Where are my mother's photos? I demanded, my voice shaking. Geraldine barely looked up from her phone. Those old frames were so dusty and outdated. I put them somewhere safe. Where? I insisted. Probably in one of the storage boxes in the attic. You can look for them tomorrow if they're so important. The casual dismissal of my mother's memory, and by extension, a piece of my father, broke something inside me. They are important. She was important. This was her home too. Geraldine finally looked at me, her expression cold. This is our home now, Allison. The sooner you accept that, the easier things will be. Your father moved on from Catherine. Perhaps it's time you did too. I spent hours searching the attic that night, going through dozens of unlabeled boxes. I never found the photos. Later, I discovered fragments of broken frames in the outdoor trash bin, the pictures themselves nowhere to be seen. When I confronted Geraldine, her denial was immediate and convincing. I would never throw away family photos. You must have misplaced them yourself. You've been so distracted lately. Maybe you should see someone about your grief. It's not healthy to cling to the past this way. The gaslighting was so effective I began questioning my own sanity. Had I imagined seeing the broken frames? Was my grief distorting my perception of Geraldine's actions? That night, lying in my basement bedroom, listening to the footsteps of Jasmine and William above me, I realized how completely I had surrendered control of my life and my home. I had become what that dinner guest assumed, the help. Invisible when convenient, summoned when needed. but never truly part of the family. Dad's voice echoed in my memory. The house is yours. I've made sure of that. It was always meant for you. But possession is 9/10 of the law. And Geraldine possessed everything now, including my will to fight back. The demand came on an ordinary Tuesday morning, delivered with the casual cruelty that had become Geraldine's trademark. I was rushing to leave for work, travel mug of coffee in hand, when she intercepted me at the door. "We need to discuss your living arrangements," she said, blocking my exit. "The current situation isn't sustainable." I checked my watch. "Can we talk about this tonight?" "I have a meeting in 30 minutes. This will only take a moment." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "William will be starting college next year, and we need to think about his future expenses. Since you're working full-time now, it seems reasonable that you should contribute to household expenses." I blinked, momentarily confused. I already buy groceries twice a month and paid for the water heater replacement in April. "Yes, but those are incidental expenses. I'm talking about something more formal." She pulled a folded paper from her pocket. "I've drawn up a rental agreement. $500 monthly seems fair, considering current market rates for rooms in this area." The coffee nearly slipped from my hand. "You want me to pay rent?" "To live in my own house." Geraldine's expression hardened. "Let's be realistic, Allison. This hasn't been your house for a long time. We're the real family now, and you're essentially a tenant. Either you can formalize that arrangement, or you can find somewhere else to live." Too stunned to argue, I took the paper and left for work. The agreement outlined not just rent, but additional expectations, specific chores, quiet hours, guest limitations, and parking restrictions. It was a document designed for a boarder, not a homeowner. That evening, Jasmine and William smirked as Geraldine presented me with a pen at dinner. "We've all discussed it, and we agree this is the best solution," she announced, as if we'd had some family meeting I wasn't invited to. "Honestly, $500 is cheap," Jasmine added. "My friend pays $750 for a basement apartment, and it doesn't even include utilities." William nodded. "Plus, you get free meals when Mom cooks." "That's worth something." I signed the paper, my signature wavering as tears threatened. Something broke inside me that day, the last thread of connection to the family life I'd once known. I was now officially a tenant in my childhood home, paying rent to live under my own roof. For 3 months, I handed over checks to Geraldine. Each payment physically painful, each one cashed immediately. I continued cooking, cleaning, and running errands, now not just as a manipulated family member, but as a paying servant. My friends were horrified when I finally admitted the situation. "This is insane, Allison," Dana insisted. "The house is legally yours. You need to talk to a lawyer." But I felt trapped in a web of emotional manipulation and exhaustion. What would Dad think if I forced his widow and her children out? Wouldn't that make me the villain in this story? The turning point came unexpectedly on a rainy Saturday when Geraldine and her children were away at a weekend spa retreat, a trip funded, no doubt, by my rent payments. Alone in the house for the first time in months, I found myself drawn to the attic, still searching for traces of my parents. In a dusty corner, behind a stack of Christmas decorations, I discovered a metal filing box I'd never seen before. Inside were Dad's personal papers, old letters, cards, and a small leather journal. I recognized his handwriting immediately, the sight of it bringing fresh grief. The journal entries spanned the last year of his life, growing more fragmented as his illness progressed. What I read changed everything. Concerned about G's interest in the house. Mentioned leaving it to Allison again today. G suggested joint ownership, but I refused. Need to speak with Martin about securing Allison's inheritance. G went through my office when she thought I was sleeping. The final entry, dated just weeks before his death, told Allison the house is hers. Pray G accepts this. Fear she won't. Martin has copies of everything. Allison must contact him if problems arise. Martin? Dad's attorney and friend. The man who had read the will but whom I hadn't spoken to since. I called him that afternoon, my hands still dusty from the attic. "I've been wondering when I'd hear from you," he said after I explained the situation. "Your father was concerned something like this might happen. That's why he was so explicit about the house in his will." "What can I do?" I asked, my voice small. "She's made herself so at home, and it's been over a year. The house is legally yours, Allison. Your father left no ambiguity about that. Geraldine has no claim to it whatsoever, and charging you rent is frankly outrageous." He suggested I meet him at his office Monday morning. "Bring any paperwork Geraldine has had you sign. And Allison, don't tell her about this conversation." Over the weekend, I carefully photographed the journal entries and returned the box to its hiding place. Something about those private words had rekindled my resolve. Dad had anticipated Geraldine's behavior. He had tried to protect me, even as he was dying. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and met with Martin. He listened without interruption as I detailed the past year, the gradual takeover of the house, the emotional manipulation, the escalating demands. "Your father saw this coming," Martin said, showing me additional notes from his files. He added special provisions to his will after his diagnosis. Geraldine contested the will privately, Tried to argue that his mental state was compromised when he signed the final version. This was news to me. She never mentioned that. Because she lost. The medical records clearly showed Thomas was of sound mind when he updated his will. He knew exactly what he was doing when he left you the house. Martin recommended I consult with Stephanie Warner, a lawyer specializing in estate disputes. She's handled cases like this before, situations where inheritance creates family conflict. I can set up a meeting this week. Stephanie was direct and uncompromising. After reviewing my documents, including the rental agreement, Dad's journal, and the original will, she laid out my options. Legally, "This is straightforward," she explained. "You own the house. Geraldine and her children are effectively guests who have overstayed their welcome. The fact that she's charging you rent for property you own is particularly egregious." "What about the renovations she's made?" I asked. "She's changed so much of the house. Without your permission as the owner, those renovations don't increase her claim to the property. In fact, making significant changes without the owner's consent could be construed as property damage." We developed a plan. First, I would gather evidence of the current living situation, photographs of the altered house, records of the rent payments, documentation of personal items that had been discarded or hidden. Then, Stephanie would prepare formal eviction notices, giving Geraldine and her children 30 days to vacate the premises. "Won't this get ugly?" I worried. "She's not going to leave willingly. That's why we'll have a sheriff's deputy present when we serve the notice," Stephanie assured me. "And we'll have a locksmith ready to change the locks once they're gone." I spent the next 2 weeks in careful preparation, documenting everything while maintaining the illusion of compliance. I continued paying for groceries, cooking meals, and responding to Geraldine's demands, all while gathering evidence for the confrontation to come. Through careful questioning, I learned that Geraldine had been making plans of her own. William casually mentioned that Mom's talking to a contractor about converting your room once you move out, a renovation I'd never discussed or agreed to. Jasmine referred to when we sell this place next year during a phone call, unaware I could hear her. The most disturbing discovery came when I overheard Geraldine on the phone with her sister. "Of course the house will be ours eventually. These things take time. Thomas made things difficult with that ridiculous will, but I have ways of handling his daughter. Another year at most. And she'll be ready to sign over her claim just to be free of the responsibility." I recorded this conversation surreptitiously, my hand shaking as I held my phone. The calculated manipulation laid bare in her words removed any lingering doubt or guilt. This woman had never intended to honor Dad's wishes. She had targeted his home from the beginning. using his illness and my grief to position herself for the takeover. With Stephanie's guidance, I secured my remaining valuables in a safe deposit box, including the journal and what few photos of my parents I'd managed to protect. I arranged for time off work for the day of confrontation and asked Heather and Dana to be on standby for emotional support. The plan was set, the documentation gathered, the legal paperwork prepared. After a year of surrendering piece by piece to Geraldine's machinations, I was finally ready to take back what was mine, not just the physical house, but the dignity and autonomy I had surrendered along with it. Dad's voice echoed in my mind as I finalized the arrangements. Don't let anyone take it from you. I wouldn't, Dad. Not anymore. The morning of reckoning arrived with appropriate dramatic flair, thunderstorms rolling in from the west, dark clouds matching my turbulent emotions. I had chosen a Thursday, knowing Geraldine would be home, but Jasmine would be at work and William at school. Fewer people meant fewer complications. At precisely 10 a.m., I heard the crunch of tires on the driveway, Stephanie arriving with Martin and Sheriff's Deputy Rachel Torres. I met them outside, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Are you ready for this? Stephanie asked, her briefcase shielded from the light rain. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, leading them to the front door, the door to my house. Though it hadn't felt that way for a long time. Geraldine was in the kitchen, flipping through a magazine with a cup of coffee. Her expression shifted from surprise to wariness as she registered the formal attire of my companions. Allison? What's going on? Who are these people? Stephanie stepped forward. Mrs. Matthews. My name is Stephanie Warner. I represent Allison Matthews, the legal owner of this property. I'm here to serve you with formal notice to vacate the premises within 30 days. She extended the document, which Geraldine ignored, her eyes fixed on me. What kind of joke is this? It's not a joke, I said, finding steady ground in my voice for the first time in months. This is my house. Dad left it to me. You've known that from the beginning. We're family, Geraldine countered, her tone shifting to wounded disbelief. After everything I've done for you? After I took care of your father through his illness? This is how you repay me. Martin cleared his throat. Mrs. Matthews, Thomas was explicit about his wishes. The house belongs to Allison. The rental agreement you created has no legal standing, as one cannot pay rent on property they already own. Geraldine's face hardened, the mask of familial concern slipping. Thomas wasn't thinking clearly at the end. He was confused, in pain. He didn't understand what he was doing. That claim was already rejected by the probate court, Stephanie interjected. We have the medical records confirming he was of sound mind when he updated his will. Deputy Torres, who had remained silent, now stepped forward. Ma'am, I'm here to ensure this legal notice is properly served. I need to confirm your receipt of this document. Geraldine snatched the paper from Stephanie's hand, her composure cracking. You ungrateful little parasite. After everything I've done to make this house a home, Thomas would be disgusted by your behavior. My father, I corrected her, would be appalled at how you've treated me in the home he built for our family. He knew, Geraldine. He suspected what you were planning. That's why he was so clear about the house being mine. Her eyes widened slightly, the first genuine reaction I'd seen. What are you talking about? I found his journal. He knew you were interested in the house from the beginning. He tried to protect me, even when he was dying. The flash of panic across her face confirmed everything. For a moment, the room was silent except for the ticking of the kitchen clock, the vintage clock that had hung there since before my mother died, one of the few original pieces Geraldine had left untouched. This is ridiculous, she finally sputtered. I've invested thousands in renovations. I've maintained this property. You can't just throw us out. Actually, she can, Stephanie replied. Any modifications made without the owner's consent don't constitute a claim to the property. You have 30 days to find new accommodations and remove your personal belongings. Geraldine's composure collapsed entirely. You think you've won? You have no idea what you're doing. William and Jasmine will be devastated. Is that what you want? To traumatize them all over again after they've already lost a father figure. The emotional manipulation that had worked so effectively for months now fell flat. They'll have you to support them. I replied calmly, just as I had to support myself after losing both my parents. Deputy Torres provided Geraldine with information about the eviction process and her rights, while Stephanie explained the inventory we would be conducting to ensure no property belonging to the estate was removed during the transition. I'll be back with William and Jasmine's father. Geraldine threatened as they prepared to leave. He's a lawyer. He'll fight this. He's welcome to review the documentation, Stephanie replied, unruffled. The legal situation is quite clear. After they departed, I stood in the kitchen, expecting to feel victorious. Instead, I felt hollow, drained by the confrontation and the knowledge that the battle had only just begun. I was right to be concerned. The 30-day notice period became a psychological warfare campaign. Geraldine rallied her family members, who began showing up unannounced to plead her case. Her sister Angela called me heartless to my face. Her brother-in-law suggested I would regret making enemies of the family. Jasmine and William oscillated between ignoring me completely and leaving nasty notes on my car or bedroom door. The word bitch appeared in soap on my bathroom mirror. My towels were used to clean up spills and left damp on the floor. Geraldine herself adopted a strategy of martyrdom, sighing heavily whenever I entered a room, making tearful phone calls within my hearing about how they would soon be homeless. We're looking at apartments, she announced at dinner one night, her voice breaking for effect. Nothing we can afford has enough space for William's gaming equipment. He'll have to sell most of it. William glared at me across the table. Thanks for ruining my life. I maintained my resolve, reminding myself of Dad's journal and the calculated way Geraldine had stripped me of dignity in my own home. Their emotional tactics couldn't work if I didn't allow them to. The situation escalated when I discovered Geraldine attempting to remove artwork from the walls, pieces that had belonged to my parents and were specifically listed in the estate inventory. These were gifts from Thomas, she insisted when I confronted her. He wanted me to have them. Then you can discuss that with Stephanie, I replied, photographing the pieces. Until then, they stay in the house. After that incident, I began noticing other items disappearing, small at first, then larger pieces. The silver candlesticks from the dining room, Dad's collection of first edition novels, Mom's vintage perfume bottles that I'd kept as mementos. I installed a small camera in my bedroom after finding evidence someone had been searching through my closet. The footage captured Jasmine systematically going through my jewelry box, pocketing several pieces before carefully rearranging what remained to hide the theft. When confronted with the evidence by Deputy Torres, who had returned to check on the situation, Jasmine broke down. Mom said anything valuable should come with us, she admitted. She said Allison doesn't deserve any of it. The most shocking discovery came 2 weeks into the notice period. While Geraldine was out, I searched her bedroom, an invasion of privacy I would have found unthinkable months earlier, but now felt necessary given the thefts. In the back of her closet, hidden behind winter coats, I found a storage container filled with items I thought were long gone. The missing photos of my mother, Dad's watches, the music box he had given me, and perhaps most disturbingly, my mother's jewelry that Geraldine had told me was probably donated by accident. Some pieces were missing. Investigation later revealed she had sold several valuable items, including Mom's engagement ring. The betrayal cut deep. These weren't just possessions. They were physical connections to the parents I had lost. I documented everything, adding it to the growing file of evidence Stephanie was maintaining. We amended the eviction notice to include theft of estate property, adding legal pressure to the rapidly approaching deadline. The final week brought escalating desperation. Geraldine attempted to flood the basement by accidentally leaving a faucet running, causing water damage to the few possessions I kept in my room there. William was caught attempting to unscrew fixtures that were part of the house. Jasmine brought friends over who treated me with open contempt in my own home. Through it all, I maintained a calm exterior while inwardly counting down the days. My friends provided crucial emotional support, with Dana and Heather taking turns staying with me when the tension became unbearable. On the final day, Stephanie arrived with Deputy Torres and a second officer. Geraldine had requested an extension the previous week, claiming they hadn't found suitable housing yet, but the request was denied based on the documented theft and property damage. "We'll need to inventory everything before they remove it," Stephanie explained, "to ensure no additional estate property is taken." The scene that followed was chaotic and emotionally charged. Geraldine alternated between tearful pleas and venomous accusations. William sullenly loaded boxes into a rented moving truck. Jasmine filmed the proceedings on her phone, narrating about how they were being forcibly removed from the only home they've known. "This isn't over," Geraldine hissed as she handed over her keys. "You'll regret this, Allison. Thomas would be ashamed of what you've become." "No," I replied, finding strength in the truth. "Dad protected this house for me because he knew what you were capable of. He would be proud that I finally stood up for myself." As their car pulled away from the curb, I felt no triumph, only exhaustion and a strange emptiness. The house, my house, was finally mine again, but it was wounded, altered, filled with echoes of conflict rather than the warm memories I had once cherished. I walked through the empty rooms that evening, cataloging the damage, scratched floors where furniture had been dragged, holes in walls from removed artwork, stains deliberately left on carpets. The physical damage could be repaired, but the emotional landscape of the house felt irrevocably changed. Standing in the kitchen where Dad and I had baked cookies and assembled Sunday morning pancakes, I allowed myself to cry for the first time since the confrontation began, not just for the house, but for the family I had lost twice over. The chapter had closed, but the story was far from finished. Reclaiming the physical space was only the beginning. Healing the wounds left behind would prove a far greater challenge. The first night alone in the empty house was eerily quiet. No footsteps overhead, no whispered conversations, no passive-aggressive sighs, just silence and the occasional creak of settling floorboards. I wandered from room to room like a ghost, touching walls and door frames, reacquainting myself with the space that was legally mine but emotionally still contested territory. For the first week, I slept on the couch in the living room, unable to choose a bedroom. My childhood room felt tainted by its conversion to Geraldine's gym. The master bedroom where Dad had died carried too many painful memories. The basement room where I'd been relegated represented a humiliation I wasn't ready to revisit. A strange guilt shadowed me as I began the cleanup process. Had I been too harsh? Should I have found a compromise? The doubts crept in during quiet moments, Geraldine's accusations echoing. Ungrateful, selfish, cruel. Heather arrived on Saturday morning with coffee and determination. "Stop second-guessing yourself," she said, handing me a paintbrush. "This house is yours. Your dad wanted you to have it." End of story. Dana joined us later with lunch and her toolkit. "We're reclaiming this place," she announced. "One room at a time." We started with the kitchen, stripping Geraldine's sterile white paint to uncover the warm yellow beneath. It took 3 coats to completely erase her presence, but as the color returned, so did fragments of happier memories. Dad teaching me to flip pancakes without a spatula, Mom singing along to the radio while preparing Sunday dinner. "Tell us about them," Dana encouraged as we worked. "Your parents. The good times in this house." So I did. Story by story, memory by memory. I reclaimed not just the physical space, but the narrative of my family that Geraldine had tried to erase. Each remembrance was a brushstroke restoring the home's true character. Martin visited during the second week, bringing a box of Dad's personal items he had kept safe. Thomas asked me to hold these back from the estate, he explained. He wanted to make sure they got to you, no matter what happened. Inside were photos I'd never seen. Mom and Dad in college, their wedding day, Mom pregnant with me. Dad's journals from before his illness. The original architectural drawings for the house. Each item a thread reconnecting me to the foundation of my life. Your father worried about Geraldine's intentions, Martin confided as we sorted through the treasures. He came to me about 6 months after the marriage, concerned about how quickly she was making changes to the house. That's when he updated his will to be absolutely clear about your inheritance. Why didn't he say anything to me? I asked. Martin's expression softened. He didn't want to burden you with his suspicions. And I think part of him hoped he was wrong, that she truly cared for him beyond his assets. Did she ever love him at all? I can't answer that, Martin replied gently. But I know he never doubted his love for you. His main concern was protecting your future. Through Martin, I connected with other friends of my parents, people who had drifted away during Geraldine's reign but who carried pieces of my family history. Eleanor, Mom's college roommate, shared stories of my parents' courtship. Frank, Dad's business partner, explained how they had designed our house together, incorporating elements that held special meaning for Mom. Most illuminating was a conversation with Patricia, who had briefly dated Geraldine's ex-husband years earlier. She's done this before, Patricia revealed over coffee. Targeted successful men, especially widowers or divorcees with assets. Her marriage to Robert followed exactly the same pattern: charm, quick commitment, then gradual isolation and control. The knowledge that my family wasn't Geraldine's first victim provided strange comfort. Her behavior wasn't a reaction to anything I had done. It was a calculated strategy she had perfected over years. As the physical restoration of the house progressed, I began addressing my emotional landscape as well. Weekly sessions with Dr. Lauren Gray, a therapist specializing in grief and emotional abuse, helped me untangle the complex web of manipulation Geraldine had woven. What you experienced was a form of gaslighting, Dr. Gray explained. She systematically made you doubt your perceptions, your memories, and ultimately your right to exist in your own space. I still don't understand how I let it happen. I admitted during one session. I'm not normally a pushover. Grief makes us vulnerable, she replied. And manipulators like Geraldine are experts at exploiting vulnerability. Add to that your desire to honor your father's memory by maintaining family peace, and you created the perfect environment for her tactics. Gradually, the house and my spirit began to heal in tandem. I reclaimed the master bedroom, repainting it and replacing the mattress where Dad had died with a new one positioned differently in the room, honoring his memory while creating space for new beginnings. The legal aftermath continued for months. Geraldine filed a countersuit claiming compensation for improvements to the property, which was dismissed when Stephanie presented evidence that these changes had been made without the owner's consent and in some cases had actually devalued the property. More serious were the theft charges related to my mother's jewelry. 3 valuable pieces were recovered from local pawn shops, their sales traced directly to Geraldine. The engagement ring was never found. The criminal case resulted in probation and a restitution order that I doubted would ever be fulfilled. Through social media, I occasionally glimpsed Geraldine's new life. She had quickly established herself in another suburb, already appearing in photos with a distinguished-looking older man at charity events. I considered warning him, but ultimately decided against it. My journey now was forward, not backward. 6 months after the eviction, I discovered a hidden compartment in Dad's old desk while cleaning, a secret drawer containing a sealed envelope addressed to me in his handwriting. The letter inside was dated just weeks before his death. My dearest Allison, If you're reading this, I'm gone, and things with Geraldine have likely unfolded as I feared they might. I'm sorry I brought her into our lives. What began as a desire for companionship in my final years became something I couldn't control once my health declined. I want you to know that this house was always meant for you. It holds our family history in every nail and floorboard. Your mother and I built it not just as a place to live, but as a legacy of love for you. Don't blame yourself for whatever has happened. Geraldine is skilled at manipulation. I recognized it too late. But you are stronger than you know, with your mother's determination and compassion. Remember that a house is just a structure. Home is what you create within it. If reclaiming this place brings you peace, fight for it. If letting it go frees you, do that instead. Either way, know that I am proud of you and the woman you've become. All my love. Dad. The letter released something that had been knotted inside me, the lingering doubt that I had somehow betrayed Dad's wishes by forcing Geraldine out. He had seen her clearly at the end. He had tried to protect me. Most importantly, he had given me permission to choose my own path forward. A year after reclaiming my house, it finally felt like home again. Not the same home it had been when Dad was alive. That was impossible, but a new iteration that honored the past while creating space for the future. I had replaced what Geraldine had destroyed, restored what could be saved, and added my own touches that reflected the woman I had become through this ordeal. The garden bloomed again with Mom's favorite flowers. Dad's workshop in the garage had become my weekend sanctuary for small woodworking projects. New family photos mingled with old ones, creating a visual timeline of healing. Friends gathered regularly for dinner parties where laughter replaced tension in the dining room. Dana eventually moved into the spare bedroom when her lease ended, bringing new energy to the space. The house that had once felt like a prison now pulsed with life and possibility. The most profound lesson from the ordeal wasn't about property rights or legal battles, though those were important. It was about the nature of family itself, that blood and marriage can create connections, but respect and love are what truly make a family. Geraldine and her children had legal ties to my father, but never embraced the values that made our house a home. True family, I discovered, could be found in unexpected places. In Heather bringing soup when I caught the flu, in Martin sharing stories of Dad over holiday dinners, in Dana teaching me to fix the leaky bathroom faucet myself. Family wasn't defined by who lived under my roof, but by who helped me rebuild when the foundations cracked. I never heard directly from Geraldine again, though occasional rumors reached me through mutual acquaintances. She had indeed remarried, a widower with a substantial estate. Sometimes I wondered if his children recognized the warning signs I had missed, if they were fighting their own battles against her subtle manipulations. But those thoughts came less frequently as time passed. My energy was focused on building rather than dwelling on destruction, on creating new memories rather than mourning stolen ones. The journey from inherited house to embattled territory to reclaimed home taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to close a door so new ones can open. My house is now truly my home again, filled with people who respect and value me. And that's a foundation no one can ever take away. Have you ever had to stand up for something that was rightfully yours? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming life's challenges. Share this with someone who might need a reminder that it's never too late to reclaim what belongs to you. Thank you for being part of my healing journey. Sometimes the family we choose is the one that helps us find our way home.